Welcome inside Thursday's Big Ten Today alongside Jordan Taylor. I'm Rick Pizzo. Each night that passes in the world of Big Ten basketball makes me scratch my head a little bit. Some because of the unexpected, some because of teams not living up to expectations, and some because the results just aren't what you would imagine they would be before the night begins.
Yeah, it's been an up and down roller coaster. And as we expected, though, Indiana, you don't know what you're always going to get from them. They've been solid at times. But Northwestern's been the team. I thought they would be scary. They had a combined four losses by a combined 12 points coming into conference play, got their doors blown off a couple times, and now they're starting to find the rhythm a little bit.
So let's get to the big story, and it's a look at the scoreboard from Wednesday night. You take a peek at that Indiana-Northwestern game. Wildcats 79-70. How about 50-plus points in the second half? And Nebraska used to be, dare I say, nearly unbeatable at Pinnacle Bank Arena, have now lost to Rutgers at home, followed up by a loss to USC at home. One of those things that doesn't make sense based on what we thought would happen before the year begins. But let's start, Jordan, where the night started, in Evanston, where Northwestern finds a way to beat Indiana by 9. The givens are there. You know what you're going to get pretty much every night from Brooks Barnhizer and Nick Martinelli. But in this game, Jalen Leach was terrific, and Ty Berry played arguably his best game of the year. And if he plays like that, I'm with you, that Northwestern is a remarkably dangerous team over the last 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, well, Chris Collins, he made the decision to bring Ty Berry off the bench, which is, that's a risk, right? You don't know what you're going to get. A veteran guy, how he's going to react. But Ty Berry has reacted tremendously. He's got 12 threes in his last 3 games, including 7 last night. And what they're doing, they're running a little more action for him, too. He's being a little more aggressive, finding his shot. He kept them in the game, Michigan, when Jalen Leach went out. And like you said, if you get those two guys adding the scoring punch, but not just that, the intensity that they brought to the table defensively is what's going to propel Northwestern forward and really make them a tough out. You just kind of see it on tape. Jalen Leach got it going against Michigan, 19 before that unfortunate ejection, but they're going under screens. They're not hesitating. They're shooting the ball with confidence. Dave Resident, yesterday at halftime, you could see it. He was kind of dejected. He thought the Michigan game, big fan, he thought that was going to be something that pushed him forward. I know he was ecstatic to see the second half turn out the way it was. But this Northwestern team is really finding a rhythm, and it's really behind those two guys finding their groove.
I think you could make an argument. Obviously, we'll never know. Had Leach not been ejected from that Michigan game, which you were on the call for, Northwestern had a lot of momentum. Do they win that game? Instead, another one of those close losses, but they find their way back in a game I feel like they kind of had to have at home against an Indiana team, Jordan, that I just don't get. I understand every team, some more than others, are going to have chemistry issues with transfer portal guys, the amount that Indiana brought in. I get it. But this is such a talented team that I just feel like they should simply be better than they are on a nightly basis.
Well, for a minute, they were winning the games they were supposed to win. They were blowing teams out that they were supposed to. They didn't have a game within 9 points either way. They were getting blown out by teams maybe they should have been being blown out by. But I think Mackenzie Mbako is really, part of the issue. He just can't find his offensive consistency, and part of that's tough. He's playing out of position at times. When Renew is in the game, he's playing the 3. He's probably more of a natural 4. When he can make shots and attack downhill, that's really when they're at their best. Umar Ballo has been exceptional. He's taken his game to another level, being able to pass out of the post. So that's really their bread and butter. They have to stay there. But in terms of Miles Rice, Trey Galloway, Mbako, and now bringing Renew back, I'm just not too sure where they're going to go to find that consistency, to find that rhythm. But Coach Woodson has a real challenge on his hands. I think they have to just continue to play through Ballo.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned on the offensive end. I mean, Mbako did have 20 last night. Ballo was in double figures. Goody was in double figures. Miles Rice was in double figures. But at the end of the day, you can't give up 54 points in the second half of a basketball game, especially on the road in this league, and expect to win. To me, the bigger issue right now might be on the defensive end.
Yeah, but they've had trouble with that all year, as you mentioned, keeping guys out of the paint. Northwestern's not even really a team that you should struggle to keep out of the paint, though. For them, it was finding those shooters. A lot of it was on offensive rebounds. They did show a little bit of a zone, but, you have to guard the ball, and I just don't know. I'm a little bit perplexed myself, and Coach Woodson, you're going to have to find something. I don't know if it's going to mix up defenses or funnel guys to Ballo, but yeah, Indiana has a real conundrum on their hands.
And sometimes when a team gets in this spot, and you hope this is the case for the Hoosiers, when you kind of feel like you're playing with nothing to lose, maybe you flip a switch a little bit. They certainly have the talent to do it. We've seen it from Indiana teams last couple of years. They make runs late in the year at the Big Ten tournament. Doesn't look like they're ready to do that this year. Then again, we've come to expect the unexpected in the world of Big Ten basketball, much like Nebraska losing at home. That was unexpected the last couple of years. Well, they lost at home again on Wednesday night, which means that USC's flight home was all smiles. Gotta love these charter trips. Jordan, did you guys travel like this all the time?
Yeah. We traveled like this. We traveled like this at least, but we did. It's a little different. But at least we had the charter flights. I was a little spoiled. Yeah.
Okay, just maybe didn't have quite as much spending cash in the pocket as some of those guys.
We got Jimmy John's for free
in the NIL era. No free meals these days. Listen, USC, that's a really nice win on the road. This team, in kind of contrast to some others, they have kind of figured it out a little bit in terms of their chemistry. They're still going to be up and down. You rely a lot on a freshman in Wesley Yates, but Desmond Claude has become, over the last month maybe, one of the best scorers inside the entire Big Ten.
If USC continues at this pace and they continue to, they're 4-4, I believe, they continue to climb up that chart, Desmond Claude's got to be in the running for Big Ten Player of the Year, for sure, all Big Ten Conference. He's attacking the rim. He's getting downhill. He's aggressive. The shot is still kind of a question, but that hasn't slowed him down at all. And for a team like Nebraska, he was the ultimate mismatch. He was scoring out of back cuts. He was attacking in transition where Nebraska likes to load up and slow you down. And he was giving them fits all night long in a game where Nebraska really did jump out at home. Connor season, Juwan Gary started out really quickly. Looked like Nebraska could have kind of suppressed USC's rhythm. But, hey, Des Claude, man, keep doing what you're doing. I like what I'm seeing. He's been impressive.
And Wesley Yates, a young fellow that's still kind of learning the game. He went for 17 again last year. And Eric Musselman's been very open about it. He says, listen, we're going to have to accept some mistakes because that's what happens when a guy is just learning college basketball. But on the flip side of those mistakes, some really solid production. He and Claude right now as a 1-2 punch, pretty much every opposing defense has been unable to handle those guys.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Coach Musselman. I think you're seeing the experience and giving those guys the leeway to grow and to understand. When they started the season, the defense was atrocious. Now you're seeing the defense come together. You're seeing them band together, shut down the paint, make guys work on that side, and then he's allowing these two guys to really get in the paint, engineer the offense. And when you can guard and you can keep yourselves in games 78-73, the Wisconsin game got away from a little bit offensive or from a defensive standpoint. But if you can keep yourself in a game, in a tight game and guard, and then you have guards who can get in the paint, make plays constantly, you don't know what's going to happen late game. And these two guys, you can see, they can go get you a win late.
How about two of the toughest places in this league to go on the road? Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln and Memorial Stadium in Champaign, State Farm Center, I should say. To do that at Illinois, to do that at Nebraska, really impressive road victories for USC. As for the Huskers, I watched this game and I couldn't stop thinking you're getting what you need from Juwan Gary, more so with 27. You're getting what you need from Bryce Williams. He does a little bit of everything. And Connor Essegian had a nice night, but this was a night where they really missed Rienk Mast. I feel like this is a game where he facilitates, he draws the big, and Josh Cohen played more minutes than he had all year for USC. You put Cohen in the blender because you can go and shoot the three on the outside. I know this is months now that we're into the season without Rienk Mast, but I feel like this was the kind of game where Nebraska truly missed his presence.
Yeah, well, the point guard play has been inconsistent for Nebraska all year long, and that's just, in general, being able to touch the paint, kick it out, things like that. It hurt him against Purdue. It hurt him last night. Yep. And I think what you're seeing, too, now, without being able to have someone who can create and do things like that, kind of control offense, their defense is starting to suffer because of that now. It's middle of January. Sometimes, they scramble, they give effort on defense. When the offense just isn't flowing correctly, sometimes you just die on the defensive side of the ball, especially when you're giving in so much effort. And a guy like Des Claude or Braden Smith is killing you time and time again. So, yeah, 100%.
Fifth straight loss now for the Huskers. They fall to 2-6 inside the Big Ten. A couple of weeks ago, they were inside Mike DeCourcy's bracket. Then they had gone to first four out. Now there's going to be some serious work to do for the Huskers in the last 12 games of the Big Ten regular season. Speaking of work, perhaps a gentleman who was attending the game last night can now take a couple of days off from work and enjoy his new vehicle. In case you missed it, during a promotion at the basketball game, a full court putt from a Husker fan. If it goes, he wins not just a new car, but a new Porsche. And, Jim, I think it has a chance. In fact, straight in the bottom. What a moment. I love it. Herbie loves it as well. They even handed him the keys directly on the court. Hadn't even given the putter back yet. What a cool moment in Lincoln.
That's unbelievable, man. Have you ever had anything? I can't make a putt from 3 feet, let alone
I can
full
make
court.
putts, but nobody's giving me Porsches for the putts that I made.
You know, if someone would have given me a Porsche for 3 feet, I'd probably still miss it and jag it. So shout out to him. That's cool, calm, and collected under pressure.
And you have no idea. It's not like you're reading the break on a green. How do you read the break on a basketball court? Obviously a ton of luck, but wonderful stuff. Sir, wash, wax, keep that thing fresh. Of course, there's a very good chance there is a new Porsche also for sale right now in the Lincoln area. This is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like when you pick up a road win inside the Big Ten. Never easy to do, but the Gophers did it this week in Iowa City as Minnesota enjoys its first 2-game conference win streak of the season. Time to welcome in Gopher head man Ben Johnson for today's big interview. Ben, I imagine it's been a pretty nice week for you and the team up in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, no, it really has. I think I'm just grateful and happy for the guys in that locker room to be able to experience success and kind of be able to be rewarded for the hard work that they put in. And we've been close a lot of times, especially when it's come to league play, and to finally now be rewarded. It's a good feeling for those guys.
I mentioned the win over Iowa, but the week began with the win over Michigan in overtime. Take me back to that morning. You wake up, the team is 0-6 in league play. Heading into that night's game, what were you seeing from your guys?
You know, to their benefit or to their credit, you know, our guys have never wavered on their confidence or their belief. I think kind of how games have played out in league, we really have gotten better every single game, even though we weren't getting the results that we wanted to. You know, we were seeing growth, and we were really, really close. And we talked about, you know, how close we were to finally be able to break through as long as they, you know, stayed the course. And to their credit, again, they never wavered. They understood that. They felt it. They realized it. And they played like it.
How much recollection do you have about whether it was your first thought or your first emotion after Dawson's game-winning 3 went down?
Yeah, I think your first thought is you're praying that it got off in time. So you're looking to make sure that there was no clock issue. And then once you realize that, you know, honestly, it's more about just watching your guys enjoy the moment and seeing the looks on their faces and the excitement, you know, being able to interact with each other on the court or the student body on the court and the fans on the court and letting them have that moment. That's special because all these kids put in so much time and effort and at this level with just, you know, how it get followed. You want them to be able to enjoy it and not have it all be, you know, negative.
Ben, how fair is it to say that for a coach, a guy who puts in so much time, 365, not just during the season, those are the moments that a coach truly lives for, to walk into that locker room and see the guys enjoying the moment?
Oh, without a question, without a doubt. You know, I think, you know, when you're a coach, you talk to your team about, you know, being selfless and trying to create memories. And that's something that they're going to be able to remember, you know, for a lifetime, is that feeling of that win, the celebration on the court, the celebration with their teammates in the locker room. You know, nobody really remembers, you know, their personal stats. You know, at the end of the day, you remember those big moments that you have and creating those memories that last a long time. And that's what we want to continue to do, is continue to play good enough and be able to be a team and continue to grow to have more memories for the rest of this year.
Special moment for everybody, especially for Dawson, a guy that, especially in this day and age of transfer portal and NIL, could have explored the opportunity to go elsewhere to play his final year. He didn't. What has his loyalty meant to you, to this program, and his presence on the floor meant to the other guys?
Yeah, I don't think there's probably a better person that could have had that moment that he had. All the hard work, everything that he's gone through in his time here, the different sacrifices that he's made just who he is as a young man, his leadership that he's shown throughout the course of the offseason, the preseason, during the season, during the ups and downs. He's just a warrior, and our team obviously thrives off him, his personality and his play, his toughness. And for him to be able to have that moment is truly special, because there's nobody that's more deserving.
Dawson follows up that game winner with another 20-point night in the win over Iowa. He gets some help, and your defense on the road is absolutely terrific, especially defending the three-pointer. Home wins are really nice, but road wins in this league are so tough to come by. What does it do from your team's mental perspective and confidence moving forward to know you can go to a place like Carver Hawkeye and leave with a win?
No, you're exactly right. Winning on the road is so special. There's a certain amount of toughness that you have to have, competitive fight that you have to have, urgency that you have to have, resolve. I mean, I could go on and on. And anytime a team can win on the road, as a coach, you're proud because they possessed all of those traits. And those things transfer to winning, not only for that in particular game, but down the road. And our guys knew, we hadn't won there since 2015. And to be able to end that streak and do it in a way that was conducive to what we talked about as far as what makes us successful with our defense and continue to build on that, I think it's special. And it shows that we are continuing to find ways to improve as a team. And we've played better, but we still have not played our best basketball. And so now that's the motivator for our guys is, how far can we take it? How greedy can we be? We can't get comfortable now that we've won 2 games in a row. We got to have that same mindset that we had when we were 0-6.
Well, Ben, I think about this mini streak, and I flash back to that January 6th home loss in double OT to Ohio State. The way that game played out, the unfortunate miscommunication with the foul in overtime, I think it's fair to say that a lot of folks believed it could have gone sideways at that moment. It didn't. So what did you, your staff, and the leaders on this team do to keep everybody believing and keep everyone together?
I think, as a whole, those guys understood. They almost did everything humanly possible to put themselves in position to win that game. And there were a couple of miscues on our end. Obviously, Ohio State's a really good team, so don't want to discredit them. But there were some things that we could have done detail-wise, that would have helped us secure that win. And so they knew that. And they realized that was on us. And so I think when you have a game that the outcome you feel like is on you a lot of the time, there's confidence in that, and to find the confidence in that. And again, our guys never wavered. They almost were hungrier. And that locker room became a little bit closer because they knew, truly how close we were. It wasn't just coach speak. I mean, it was right there for the taking. And we just had to figure out what we needed to do to get over that final hurdle and that final hump and go secure a win.
Great news, you've won 2 in a row. The bad news is that you're still in the Big Ten, so the upcoming schedule is brutal. 3 of your next 5 are against teams currently ranked in the top 17, including your next 2. First at home against Oregon, and then Tuesday at Michigan State. I'm curious, at this point in the season as a coach, how do you manage and balance the need for reps versus rest, and also the need for some mental rest, because it can be such a grind on the mind throughout a 20-game conference schedule in this league?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think as a coach, you got to have a handle on your team, your locker room, your players. I think winning obviously helps. Nobody really gets as tired when you're winning. The injuries and all that stuff kind of goes away the more you win. So there's an energy. I think our guys really want to be in the gym now more than ever. Not that they weren't before, but they really, really want to hunker down. And so you just worry about that. You keep it, simple. I think we've really tried to emphasize worrying about the current present day and not getting too far ahead, whether you win or lose. It's like, how can we have the best, walkthrough film session practice today? How can we have the best lift tomorrow? How can we have the best prep tomorrow? And just keep it pretty consistent so that, mentally you try to stay fresh and you're not overwhelmed by what might be ahead of you, but you're just living in the moment. And for us, we got to be detail oriented. We've got to stay in that moment and understand what got us to this point, not shy away from that, and literally take it just day by day.
Ben, I'm sure you've gotten plenty of congratulatory texts, maybe folks reaching out on social media during this win streak. I'm curious, have you gotten any texts or social media reach outs that were mistakenly designed for the other Ben Johnson, who's been in the news this week as the new coach of the Chicago Bears?
You know what's funny? I was joking with a friend yesterday. The amount of DMs that I received on Instagram from people from the state of Michigan has been incredible. Obviously, probably former Lions fans. I won't say the name, but I actually had a text message from somebody that is in the NFL that obviously have both of our names that accidentally hit me instead of him. So that's kind of been unique. I know our guys saw, I think Rothstein had somebody tweeted at him and he went on his deal about me and Northwestern. So, you get that a lot. It's obviously a pretty common name and he's a hot name right now. And so, it is what it is.
Hey, it's been a good week for more than one Ben Johnson, as long as he stays in the NFL, because if he comes to the Big Ten, I'm going to be really confused moving forward. Success for him in Chicago, success for you in Minnesota. Everything works out well. Ben Johnson, truly appreciate the time. Congrats on the win streak. Hope you guys keep it going.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Rejoined now by Jordan Taylor. This is really impressive. I mentioned the Ohio State loss. They had a couple of really tough losses after that when they did the road trip. Losses to Wisconsin, losses to Maryland, and then suddenly you start to figure things out. You get that boost with the overtime win against Michigan, and everything feels different. The food tastes better. The air seems clearer.
Yeah, I mean, they're 2-6 right now, and really, they could be 3-5, like you said, that loss to Ohio State. So they should feel good about themselves. But really, right now, I think it's about Dawson Garcia and the way that he's been aggressive and attacking the last two games specifically. He's averaging 19 points per game. That's the most of his career. But in the last two games, 19 shots a game, 23 points. But it's the way he's doing. He's catching at the elbows. He's always looking to attack. He's so good he's going to fall into 15 points. But now he's been very intentional. What that has done is taking pressure off the second score a little bit, which they're patching together. Mike Mitchell's done it one game. Lakai Patterson found his rhythm the other night against Michigan. Isaac Osama has had games where he's been great. And then Femi Odekale, the last game against Iowa, was the one who put in 18 for him.
It's interesting. Oregon is the team that's ranked their top 15, but they've played so many close games. They struggle offensively sometimes against teams that can kind of, as my friend Rafael Davis says, shut off the water. And Minnesota has shown that at times they can do that. And this matchup with Garcia and what you would assume would be Oregon big Nate Biddle looks to be a pretty favorable matchup for the Gophers. I know Minnesota will be the underdog in this game. I wouldn't at all be surprised if they were able to knock off the Ducks.
Yeah, Dawson has a favorable matchup any night he steps on the floor, to be honest. It just is how he's going to approach it. But then you mentioned shutting off the water. They've held Vlad Golden to 5 for 15 shooting. He had 18 points, but he struggled. They held Braden Smith 7 to 17, but he was 1 for 7 in the first half. They held Bruce Thornton to 4 for 10. So they can shut people's water off, and I think they can do the same with Jackson Shellstat. The way they show at the point of attack, Parker Fox is great. They have a low man always in place. They can guard the basketball. At times they have, it's the same thing that we talked about a minute ago when their offense shuts down with Nebraska. When their offense shuts down, the defense kind of shuts down. So if they can find a way to continue to get guys to score, stay in rhythm offensively, and you put that on guys like Lakai Patterson, like Isaac Osama, other than Dawson. Lakai is top 6 in assist-to-turnover ratio among Power 5 guards. And then Isaac Osama is a guy who is finding his rhythm as a freshman. Those guys can find a rhythm, and Mike Mitchell can knock down shots. Minnesota is always going to be a tough out because how they guard.
I asked Ben about the mental grind and keeping your team fresh above the shoulders. How much of an issue is that, especially when you start to struggle, especially if – now, listen, Minnesota has 2 wins in a row, but they know just 1 game above 500. They can't go on any type of losing streak here and expect to make any type of postseason tournament. So how much does the mind play into the last 6 weeks of conference play? Because physically, everybody's exhausted.
It's everything. And I think winning 2 games is a big start. But I think, I was on the team my freshman year. We lost 6 games in a row after starting 3-0. And I was like, man, this is going to be an awful season. But then you get one. You turn the corner. You see the ball go through the rim. Good things happen. And it's really about, all right, how do you string one possession together, one basket together, just one at a time? And when you start to do that, good things start to happen. And keeping your mental together, it's, this is the time where you kind of got to separate from the outside noise. Stop answering your phone a little bit, even your mom and dad if you have to, and just really lock in because they have a chance to turn their season around, but it's not going to be easy.
How about that comment by Ben Johnson about he didn't want to reveal the name, but he's getting DMs from guys in the NFL wishing him good luck with the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, Ben Johnson, man, he went to De La Salle High School. That's a rival for my Benilde St. Margaret's in the cities, and he's one of the best dudes and you're cheering for him. I'm cheering for him, even as a Badger, and, I just hope he can keep it going.
No, that's this Ben Johnson, not the Ben Johnson who just got the job with the Bears. That one, that one you're not rooting for, right?
I like the Lions story. I'm a Vikings fan, but I have an affinity for winners, man.
Yeah, but
I like
he's now the Bears. Now. He's not on the Lions anymore.
Hey, you know what? I'm a Chiefs fan.
Oh,
I like winners, man. I like winners.
Yeah, apparently. Chiefs fan. He probably likes the LA Dodgers. I don't know who just won the. He liked the Boston Celtics. Golden State Warriors a couple of years ago. No, I get it. Listen, we get it. A lot of focus right now on football. Ohio State just won a national championship. We're in the middle of Big Ten basketball season. But don't sleep on what's happening on the frozen pond. You have teams all over the top 10. Ohio State unexpected on the road at Penn State. Minnesota, Michigan State, two of the four best teams in the country. Michigan still trying to get back to the NCAA tournament, back to the Frozen Four for a fourth straight year. Notre Dame, likely not a postseason team this year. They're out of conference this weekend, playing host to Lindenwood. Talk about all the games coming up this weekend and moving on through the rest of the season. Hockey analyst Paul Caponigri is with us. Yep. Let's start with the marquee matchup, Minnesota, Michigan State, number 4, number 2 in the country. We expected these teams to be really good at the start of the year, but now they're not just expected, they're actually favorites to get to the Frozen Four at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they've really, I don't know if there's any surprises, really. I think they're getting a lot of the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think Minnesota, they have one little question mark, and it's goaltending, because they're not playing one guy. And that's always a question mark when you get to the NCAA, because who's going to play that second game? So are you going to switch to this other guy after you win the first round? For Minnesota, from 1 to 19, they're as loaded as it gets, I think, talent-wise. But Michigan State, they don't really have any question marks except for the experience of getting to a Frozen Four. Last year, they were 1 win away, lost to Michigan in the regional final. But they got Trey Augustine, who is doing exactly what everyone thought. I think that's what's so great about him is he has all these expectations, right? And he lives up to them. And when you're a goalie, as you would know.
And not just in college. I mean, he went to the World Juniors and was dominant.
2 in a row. He's won 2 golds that had never been done before. He played the semifinal and the final in both of them, so he plays in the big moments. And yeah, you know what's funny? In that tournament, he had a struggle at the start.
At the very beginning, yes.
He let in a couple goals, but you know what? When it happens, he's always good when it counts. Like that's what matters with goaltending.
And he's still young. Cappy, it seems like he's been around forever.
It's
crazy.
19.
And I think, listen, I love Minnesota too. I think they're the more talented team. If you just match up roster versus roster, depth, scoring ability, but the ultimate difference comes between the pipes when you get into the postseason.
Yep.
As for this particular matchup, in East Lansing, Adam Nightingale deserves so much credit. He's now not just made this program a perennial contender over the last couple of years, he's brought all the excitement back. I mean, you go to a game now in East Lansing, especially a game like this against Minnesota, the environment is unbelievable. This will be the series, I think, that folks are not just looking at in the Big Ten. This will be the focus for the nation in terms of college hockey this weekend.
Oh, absolutely. And one little nugget, I'll give a shout out to Ben Holden, who's doing the game this weekend. He told me last Saturday was a 100th game for Adam Nightingale. He has the highest win percentage in the first 100, more than the great Ron Mason or Rick Comley, who won the last national championship in the Big Ten Conference. So Adam Nightingale has done a fantastic job. And like you said, no freebie tickets anymore. You got to pay to get in the building. And East Lansing, we saw it last year in the Big Ten championship game against Michigan. That place was bonkers, and I just love that setup. And it's going to be great this weekend because you got first place in the Big Ten, where you get that home ice and you get that bye in the first round, and then everything you're like now too is about national championship, national tournament, getting a 1 seed. Both those teams want to get it. I don't know how they don't get a split here, but you just never know in the Big Ten. They went into Mariucci and tied and got a win on the road and came back in the third period. But Minnesota's in a better place right now. They're healthy. They were down to like 17 skaters. They didn't even have a full lineup of players when they played in December.
And when they do have a full lineup, we saw what Minnesota did in their weekend set a few weekends ago against a really talented Michigan team. Beat Michigan in 2 straight, 8-0 in that series. I mean, that's just how talented
wasn't a question
and
there.
Dangerous the Gophers are. Okay, so now speaking of that Michigan team, listen, they're dealing with a different roster than they've had the last couple of years. I mean, Brandon Naurato and this team have lost so many guys to the next level. That's part and parcel of what this job is. You're going to get top-level guys who are going to look to move on to the NHL. We totally get it. But they've been to 3 straight Frozens, and now at 10 in the nation, and we'll get to the Pairwise in just a little bit, they're not in danger of missing the tournament, but they're also in a spot where you really can't afford to have a bad weekend against a team that's not ranked.
Yeah, and you're playing a Wisconsin team that right now they are tied for 4th in the Big Ten. They played 14. They both have 10 games left. But that's the last home ice situation in the playoffs. So that's what pretty much they're battling this weekend for. They're both at 20 points in the league. And then, Wisconsin, we'll get to this pairwise. They're not ranked, but they are set up a lot closer in the pairwise right now. So there's a lot for them to play with. With Michigan, the one guy that they've added at Christmas, Will Harkoff, comes right in. 17 years old. I think he just turned 18 this week. He scores a goal in his first game at Wrigley Field outside.
I was going to say, the frozen confines.
I mean, that's what's so great about these kids, and I'm in awe of it, because they come in as 17, 18-year-olds. He comes in mid-season and looks like a professional. Like, nothing phases these young guys like when they come in as such young players. And he's really elevated their power play. Their power play has been on fire, and that was always a staple with the Luke Hughes teams and the Owen Power teams. They had so much talent. Their power play was over 30, 35%. They've creeped up to 27%. They're the best in the Big Ten now. That has been a weapon for them recently because they were having trouble scoring goals. That's where they didn't have the talent they had before. And so if they can continue with that, Will Harkoff is 6'4".
Big kid.
He's 18, though, and he gets in front of the net, and he causes chaos, and he's got the skill around it, too. So that's really boosted Michigan.
What about the Badgers? You know Mike Hastings well. Played for him. He's a guy who defensively, his teams generally lock you down. But Wisconsin has gotten some offensive performances this year that I'm not sure we saw coming.
Yeah, I mean, you love to see elevation of players like Quinn Finley, right? He had a really nice freshman year, but he's elevated to be one of the top players in the country.
But we thought he'd be good. He has turned into one of the best scorers in all of NCAA hockey.
Right. I think you just don't know how good, right? Like that step from freshman to sophomore year. He had a great game at Wrigley Field to set up the tying goal, and then he's just become an elite goal scorer. He's tops on the power play. They set him up. They want him on that backside, as you're seeing right there. But he's become a shooter, too. I think he's changed to a shoot-first guy. He's got 18 goals. He's tied for the country lead with Isaac Howard of Michigan State. And they needed a go-to line, where Wisconsin kind of needs that secondary help, though. If they want to elevate in the second half, get that home ice in the Big Ten tournament, and move up. They got to go way over. They got to go 10 games. They got to go out 6-4, 7-3 at least.
Minimum.
They want to get into that NCAA tournament without winning the Big Ten.
So we've talked a lot about expectations, teams, players, exceeding expectations. I don't think that any team in the country has exceeded expectations based on where they were expected to be in the beginning of the year more than your alma mater. Because Ohio State has been unbelievable, and the job that Steve Rollick has done to get this team into the top 10 in the country with so many question marks heading into the year, it has been a fantastic story to follow.
Yeah, I mean, the transfer portal, I think, is probably the number one story, and then their goaltending. Christopher Eberle, the sophomore, has really elevated his game. They gave him all the starts right before Christmas. They had 4 straight home games, Penn State, Notre Dame. Teams that are down, but they are expected to win, and they were able to win all 4 of those games. He was fantastic. I think he was the national goalie of the month in December. And then you have Gunnar Fontaine, the greatest name in college hockey, who is Hanson Bukata has become, he's one of the leading defensemen in the country. He was injured last week against Minnesota. We'll see after a week off if he'll play, but those transfers have really come in, and you just never know with those. When they're the older guys, you're fifth-year guys, but you're freshmen in terms of the experience in the Big Ten.
Well, that's why that's why he did such a good job, because he didn't just go for the best guys, he went for the right guys.
The fit, yes. And it's hard to do that. When he talked about, he's like, hey, we had a couple phone conversations with the guys. Some guys do take visits. I think Gunnar Wolf did take one, but Aiden Hansen-Bukata, just a couple conversations, and it felt like the right fit, and that's just the world we're in now with the transfer portal is, okay, it feels right, and then they've just stepped in and really done a nice job. And Riley Thompson is another guy, scored 2 goals in that Wrigley Field game to win that game. And then they've just gelled. You get the confidence early. They're winning. They won the games early, right? The games that, yeah, their non-conference wasn't super strong, but they won all those games. If you lose a couple of those, that dips you way down, and they took care of business.
And I think that's the right schedule to have. When you have a team of newer guys trying to figure out what's their role, how do they fit in with all the other pieces, and that Fontaine-Thompson combination at Wrigley, I think that game specific, I don't want to put too much on one game, but the way they came back, who they beat, the way they won it in the last minute, I think that's something that they kind of build on now for the rest of the year. Already inside the top 10, you know they're going to be part of the NCAA tournament, continuing to write one of the best stories in all of college hockey. And for you, taking a look at the Big Ten tournament resumes for the 5 teams right now, either in or on the cusp of being in the NCAA tournament, should the bracket be released today. That third slot down on the left bottom side of your screen, Pairwise. That is the computer-based formula that is used to fill out the NCAA tournament. For those that are unfamiliar, there is no selection committee, so to speak. There is no debate about the last team to get in. This is all math.
So do
the math. Go back to the BCS formula. Well done, Cappy.
So get everybody involved.
So let's discuss exactly what this means. We know that teams basically, historically speaking, if you're inside the top 14, you feel pretty good. If you're inside the top 13, you feel really good. If you're inside the top 13, it matters not if 3 other schools, leagues, that would only get 1 school in, have some random team win their league. And then you would push from 13 all the way down to 16. So if you're in the top 13, you're pretty comfortable. Right now, Michigan State, Minnesota, and you have to feel like Ohio State and Michigan have very little to worry about. Michigan State and Minnesota know they're playing in the NCAA tournament.
Yes. And this year's a little bit different because there's 6 conferences, right? So there's 6 automatic bids. 3 of those right now are 1-bid leagues right now. Well, that'll be the kind of first time we've dealt with that, as it would be Quinnipiac, Minnesota State, and the winner of the AHA. So that 13 is there, but if a Big Ten team or a NCHC team, which they're a little down this year, they only have 3 teams. If one of their bottom 5 or 6 were to win the league. So when I look at that, and in Wisconsin, right, they're under 500, you're like, how are they where they're at? Well, 6 of their 12 losses are in overtime.
Yep.
And you do not get computer credit for a full loss when you lose in overtime. It's like less than a half of a loss. So when you look at that number, it's more like they have 9 losses. It's hard to, when you look at the record. They try to keep it simple. But Wisconsin, so that's what makes this weekend so big and the rest of their game. They dug themselves such a hole that there's no room for any. They have to be almost perfect here in the bet.
But I think that's a really important qualification that you make, because folks would look at their record and say, they're 2 games under 500. How are they even in conversation for the NCAA tournament? That's how. Because those overtime losses, if you don't go to a shootout, it's an overtime loss. Like
you're playing 3-on-3 instead of 5-on-5. For people that don't know that, that's why it's not a true regular hockey game. And I think the NCAA did a good job of changing that. And I think they should even maybe do it a little more, to be honest.
Well, and we got rid of, remember, in the past, which some folks liked it better and some folks just were more confused by having a 4th line in your record. So you had wins, losses, ties, overtime losses, and then you could even go further to break down shootout wins
your overtime
and shootout
wins,
losses.
Right.
So it was just too much confusion. So 4 teams, you mentioned Wisconsin.
Yes.
Michigan is also Michigan's also kind of, you're in a spot, if you're Michigan or you're Ohio State, where you feel okay right now, but you also cannot afford any type of swoon in late January or February.
I think getting swept is the big key, or not getting swept. So that's where, with Wisconsin, their opportunity, if they were to sweep Michigan this weekend,
it completely flips.
It could flip them and almost have Michigan out. I think what helps Michigan is it says they have the 2nd hardest schedule. I don't know who's number 1, because their non-conference was all top 20 teams, including 2 in BU, Western Michigan. Those teams are top 10. Arizona State's 12. Minnesota State's 15. So they did not play one cupcake, if you want to call
and
that.
And in league play, you're going to play 4 times against Michigan State. You're going to play 4 times against Minnesota. You're going to play 4 times against Ohio State.
Right. So, I mean, it should help them because that's what the Pairwise does is last week, Michigan won on Friday and went down in the Pairwise. They lost on Saturday to Michigan State and went up in the Pairwise because all the other teams around the country and what they're doing.
So not in a vacuum.
Exactly. So it's very tricky. It's frustrating for you because it's hard. We can sit here for 2 hours and try to break it down. It's just no way to know exactly. There's a lot of people that do. There's some people out there that show the graphs and what if they go 3-3, if they go, this happens, this is where they'll be. But it depends. Like a team like UMass Lowell lost to Bentley last week, and that dropped them 5 spots, and that moved Michigan up.
So let me put you on the spot quickly before we say goodbye. We know Notre Dame, Penn State not going to be part of this unless they go through a run at the Big Ten tournament. I see 4. Do you see a realistic possibility of 5?
I mean,
I think everything would have to work out perfectly.
Yeah, there'd have to, or maybe a Wisconsin were to win the tournament.
Yes,
win the Big Ten tournament, and that's where right now the Hockey East has 7 teams, which is crazy for one league to get that many teams in. So things can change. There's 6 weeks left in the regular season. Everyone's got 10 to 14 games left, or 10 to 12 games left. So a lot can happen. But if Wisconsin gets hot, and they were predicted top 10 in the country before, they play 8-4-2 in their last 12. If they go, like I said, 6-3-1, something like that, you got to win these overtime games. You got to win 1 or 2 of those. It really could be the difference. What was that? 8 years ago, that Minnesota team that just missed by what? 1,000th
of a point.
Yep.
That's how it happens.
1 goal in overtime.
Very important series this week for Michigan and Wisconsin, and of course the marquee matchup between Michigan State and Minnesota. Want to share some volleyball news with you. This just came through on Thursday morning. Mimi Collier, a 3-time All-American at Oregon and was a unanimous selection of the first team All-Big Ten this year, has decided to transfer, and she will stay inside the Big Ten, now playing for Wisconsin. A huge get for Kelly Sheffield and the Badgers. Illinois, Maryland coming up tonight. The Illini, of course, coming off that heartbreaking 2-point loss on the road against Michigan State. No hanging your head after a loss like that in East Lansing. Maryland beat Nebraska in overtime. It's Maryland, Illinois tonight from Champaign, 9 o'clock Eastern as an FS1 broadcast. Some thoughts on that one now from Jordan Taylor. A few more minutes here on Big Ten Today. This Illinois team, I still believe, even after that loss, is a team that's going to have a say in the Big Ten title at the end of the year. And I still think they have arguably the most dangerous player in this league in Kasparis Yakuchonis.
Well, I agree with you 100%, first of all. But KJ had 3 points last game. He played 9 minutes, and Illinois was in a 2-point ball game. They got 12 points from Trey White, KJ, and Ben Hummerkaus. And Illinois was still right there. They finally got Ivisic going offensively, 15 over his last 2 games. He didn't have any double-digit games in the Big Ten. And the return of Will Riley. Illinois is so well-rounded that it's incredible. They're built to win in March. They have rebounding, they have size, they have athletic wings. And now you got a guy, Will Riley, who has been struggling from the 3-point line and from the field, finding his rhythm. He started the year really well, and you see him getting to it off back screens, getting downhill, and just attacking the rim in a various amount of ways. And if you're Coach Underwood, I walk away from that game and I'm almost like, I'm good because I can go anywhere. It's unbelievable. This Illinois team is so talented, and again, you know they're going to rebound the ball, which you always have a chance to win.
And when KJ gets healthy, you know the difference he makes on this team. But I will also point out that's really good coaching because Brad Underwood sees Will Riley struggling, and you then put him in positions where option A is to go to the rim.
100%. But, I mean, even then, option A has to go to the rim, and Will Riley, I think 46% of his shots have been threes. Will, you're 6'9".
Too many.
You're athletic. Yeah. You've been struggling. He was 2 for 19 going into that game from 3 in Big Ten play. Get to the rim, young fella. You can do it. NBA scouts talk about him. They like his upside. The one thing is finishing at the rim, doing things like that. So, and I'll go back to, again, how many coaches in the Big Ten in the country can go to presumably their 6th man and have them lead you in scoring and be comfortable giving him 17 shots in a game on the road against the first-place team in the Big Ten.
Well, that's when a kid comes to you and says, but, Coach, I want to shoot that 3. I know I'm struggling. I'm open. And the coach says, You're open for a reason.
Yeah.
Drive to the rim. Quickly, on the Terps, this is maybe a game where you have that two-headed monster of Reese and Queen, and you say, fellas, go to work down low.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting matchup. Maryland, I thought they would be higher up in the standings, a little bit inconsistent, but they do have the tools to match up with Illinois because of Derek Queen and Julian Reese. And then the matchup to watch is Jacoby Gillespie and Kylan Boswell. Those two going at it. If they can slow Gillespie down, no chance for the Terps, but Derek Queen can always get in there and change the game.
Glad you mentioned Boswell. I think he's a guy that doesn't get enough credit because he does a little bit of everything for the Illinois Fighting Illini. That'll wrap up this edition of Big Ten Today. For Jordan Taylor and Paul Caponigri, I'm Rick Pizzo. As always, we appreciate the hang here on the Big Ten Network.